If you want to understand modern power, do not start with ideology, do not start with left versus right, start with a colder question. Who controls attention? Who controls incentives? Who controls institutions? Because in the 21st century, power is not a throne, power is a machine, and Donald Trump is one of the clearest case studies of how that machine works, not because you love him, not because you hate him, but because his trajectory exposes the hidden wiring of the United States: money, media, brand, conflict, and finally, the presidency. So today we're going to map the system, how Trump converted wealth into a brand, how the brand became attention, how attention became political capital, and how political capital became institutional control. And at the end, you'll understand something bigger than Trump. You'll understand America. Because Trump is not just a man, he is a stress test of the system. Section 1, the first lesson of power. The first lesson is simple: money is not power. Money is leverage. It can open doors, it can buy visibility, it can reduce consequences. But money alone does not command loyalty. It does not create movements. It does not shape reality. Trump inherited access to money and real estate. But what made him different was that he didn't treat business as only business. He treated business as theater. He understood something most rich people miss. If people believe you're powerful, you become powerful. Perception is a form of currency, and Trump learned to print it. Section 2, the brand as a weapon. Trump's early rise was not only buildings, it was branding. His name on towers, his name in headlines, his name attached to winning. But the key point is this: his brand did not depend on universal approval, it depended on constant visibility. In the modern media economy, attention is oxygen, and controversy is a generator. Trump learned how to create an endless loop: say something loud, media covers it, people argue about it, his name spreads, his relevance increases. This is not random behavior, it is an attention strategy, and attention is the gateway to power. Then television changed everything. The Apprentice turned Trump from businessman into a national symbol. Millions of people did not study his balance sheets. They watched a narrative, they watched authority, they watched a boss, they watched a man who seemed decisive, dominant, and unafraid of confrontation. Reality TV did something politics rarely does. It created emotional familiarity, and familiarity is political gold. Because trust is not always rational. Often trust is repetition. If people see you for years, you become psychologically real to them. That is the power of media. It manufactures legitimacy. When Trump entered politics, many experts treated him like a joke. No traditional path, no conventional discipline, no typical coalition building. But he did not need old political power. He built a new kind. Traditional politics is institutional. Modern politics is narrative. Trump did not primarily run on policy documents, he ran on identity. He positioned himself as the outsider, the fighter, the disruptor, the voice of people who felt ignored. This matters because institutions produce rules, but identity produces loyalty, and loyalty is stronger than agreement. Loyalty does not require perfection, it requires a shared enemy and a shared story. Trump delivered both. Now we need to talk about the true engine, the outrage algorithm. In the social media era, the most powerful message is not the most accurate message, it is the most emotionally contagious message. Anger travels fast, fear travels fast, humiliation travels fast. Trump mastered viral politics: short phrases, clear targets, simple framing, maximum emotional charge. He adapted politics to the logic of platforms. This is critical, because once you master platform logic, you can bypass gatekeepers. You do not need approval from institutions when you can reach millions directly. That is a fundamental shift in power, and it is bigger than Trump. Trump simply exploited it better than almost anyone. Attention is not power by itself. Attention is raw fuel. Power begins when you convert attention into control. The presidency is the ultimate conversion. Because the US presidency is not just a job, it is a command center. It shapes regulations, appointments, enforcement priorities, foreign policy signals, sanctions, tariffs, military posture, and the tone of institutions. When Trump becomes president, his brand does not disappear. It fuses with the state, and that creates something rare: personal brand plus state authority. That combination is explosive. People think power is passing laws. That's only one part. A president has power even without Congress, because the executive branch is massive. Agencies, departments, prosecutorial discretion, regulatory enforcement, contracts, immigration decisions, trade decisions, executive orders, appointments. The real question is, who runs the bureaucracy? Because bureaucracy is policy. It decides what is enforced, what is ignored, what gets resources, what gets punished. That is why every administration fights for appointments, judges, agency heads, advisors, because people control systems, and systems shape reality. Trump's story is partly about elections, but it is also about control over the executive machine. Now here's the most controversial lesson. Trump uses conflict as a tool. Most politicians avoid chaos. Trump weaponizes it. Because conflict produces three outcomes. It dominates media cycles. It forces people to take sides. It keeps him at the center of the conversation. In a world where attention is limited, being the main character is a power advantage. Even scandals can function as advertising because the mind remembers repetition. And the more people argue about you, the more unavoidable you become. This is why neutral analysis matters. You can personally dislike the method, but you still must understand the mechanism. Conflict can be turned into momentum. That is a reality of modern media power. Another overlooked form of power is internal control, not just winning the presidency, but shaping the party, shaping endorsements, shaping primary elections, shaping fundraising, shaping who is allowed to rise. In politics, there is public power and internal power. Public power is the speech. Internal power is the gate. If a political figure becomes the gate, they decide who gets oxygen. That is strategic control, and it can outlive any single election cycle. This is why Trump remains influential even when he is not physically present in every room, because influence becomes infrastructure, and infrastructure outlasts moments. It becomes a network. Now we zoom out. This is not only about Trump, this is about the United States. America is uniquely vulnerable to personality-driven power for 4 reasons. 1. Its media ecosystem is fragmented and competitive. Outrage sells, speed beats nuance. 2. Its campaign system rewards fundraising and attention. Visibility becomes viability. 3. Its institutions are complex, which allows rule by executive action when Congress is gridlocked. 4. Its culture treats fame as legitimacy. The last one is the most dangerous, because fame is not expertise. But in the attention economy, fame is interpreted as authority. This is the environment where a media-trained figure can outperform institution-trained figures. Now let's talk international impact. When the US president speaks, it's not just words, it's a signal. Markets react, allies recalibrate, adversaries adjust, military planners revise scenarios, diplomats interpret posture. The US presidency carries a global shadow. So, even if the president is speaking primarily for domestic audiences, the world still reads it as strategy. This is why modern power is so unstable, because narrative politics can generate real-world consequences. And in periods of global tension, every signal becomes amplified. That does not mean every headline is true, but it means every headline has impact, because perception shapes decisions, and decisions shape escalation or restraint. So, the most important question becomes, who controls the narrative during instability? That is one of the most valuable forms of power on Earth. Let's build a framework you can remember. Trump's rise can be explained as a power stack, a layered system. Layer 1, capital, money and access, starting leverage. Layer 2, brand, a public identity bigger than reality. Layer 3, media dominance, constant visibility, controversy as distribution. Layer 4, direct communication, bypassing gatekeepers through modern platforms. Layer 5, emotional coalition, identity politics, loyalty networks. Layer 6, institutional consolidation, the presidency, appointments, executive power. When you stack all 6, you don't just win attention, you gain system-level influence, you shape incentives, you pressure institutions, you become unavoidable. That is modern power. Now, here is the ending that matters. The lesson is not Trump is good. The lesson is not Trump is evil. The lesson is structural. A system that rewards attention will promote attention-optimized leaders. A system that rewards outrage will produce outrage entrepreneurs. A system that treats fame as legitimacy will elevate performers into command positions. Trump did not invent these incentives. He exploited them, and that should force one question. If the system keeps rewarding the same behaviors, then the next Trump-like figure doesn't need to be Trump. They just need to understand the machine, because the machine will always be there. waiting, ready to convert attention into authority, ready to convert conflict into momentum, ready to convert narrative into reality. So the real question is not, what will Trump do next? The real question is, what kind of leader does America's incentive structure create next? Because once you understand the power stack, you can spot the pattern early, and once you spot the pattern, you can predict the future, not by guessing events, but by tracking incentives, because incentives are how power really works. Money is not power. Media is not power. Office is not power. Power is control over perception, over incentives, over institutions, and Trump's story is the clearest map of that machine in modern America. This is not politics, this is structure, and structure is how power works.